María Jesús Montero faces up to 4 years in prison for the crime of embezzlement. Let's get started. Music. Hello everyone and welcome to a new edition of Medidas Cautelares. Now recovered from the marathon of the Coldo plot trial, which as you know was concluded last night and is now awaiting a verdict. And it's our job to keep investigating and reporting on other issues that are happening these days, and honestly with the Coldo plot trial we just can't keep up. And we've learned information about the Court of Auditors, which for once has caught something. The Court of Auditors of Enriqueta. Chicano, well, it seems he did his job and caught it. A diversion of European Union funds by the government of Pedro Sanchez and his then Minister of Finance, María Jesús Montero, to pay for pensions. And pay close attention because this could bring direct criminal consequences for Montero. The former Minister of Finance and PSOE candidate could face up to 4 years in prison for the Andalusian regional government in the upcoming regional elections on May 17 precisely for diverting these European Union funds for pensions. We are going to share all the information as we always do, displaying it on the screen. By the way, if you haven't done it yet, remember to subscribe to the Medidas Cautelares channel. We're about to reach 129,000 subscribers on our way to 150,000. And here we already have this information on the screen with María Jesús. María Montero on the front page, of course, raising her fist. Yes, plenty of fist waving, the fist used to steal, divert funds, or commit crimes. Attention, because this information has two sides. On one hand, what María Jesús Montero could be facing, and on the other hand, once again, the miserable role of the Prosecutor's Office. The Attorney General Teresa Peramato and the European Public Prosecutor's Office are looking the other way, with the aim of not investigating. President of the government and former Minister of Finance, María Jesús Montero, for an alleged crime of embezzlement after diverting European Union funds to pay pensions. The Court of Auditors has detected in a report on the statement of the General State Accounts for 2024 the use of 2.389 billion euros. We repeat the figure, which is tremendous. 2.389 billion euros from European funds for the payment of pensions, a major budget diversion. The agency points out that the measure was adopted due to insufficient credit to cover commitments related to civil service pensions and minimum pension supplements. In that scenario, budget modifications were authorized, financed as surplus funds from the Recovery and Resilience Facility. Well, the legal sources we have consulted in Medidas Cautelares and in Libertad Digital tell us that the State Attorney General's Office of Teresa Peramato or the European Public Prosecutor's Office are competent to investigate the former Minister of Finance, María Jesús Montero, as the person responsible for the budgets for an alleged crime of embezzlement after diverting European Union funds to pay pensions. All those members of the government or high-ranking officials who participated in the decision would also be responsible for the aforementioned crime of embezzlement. Article 416-233 of the Penal Code, after the reform approved by Pedro Sanchez's own government. It establishes, and this is verbatim, that any authority or public official who uses the public assets they manage for a purpose other than the one intended will face prison sentences of 1 to 4 years and special disqualification from public employment or office for 2 to 6 years. If serious damage or obstruction results through the service to which it was assigned, and disqualification from public employment or office, from 1 to 3 years and a fine of 3 to 12 months if it does not result. This is what Article 433 of the Penal Code says about the crime of embezzlement, reformed by the government of Pedro Sanchez himself. And the same sources we've consulted emphasize that Peramato could order an investigation through the Anti-Corruption Prosecutor's Office, which is usually in charge of investigating this. These matters are about the diversion of European Union funds to pay pensions. However, he has kept a low profile so as not to harm Pedro Sanchez's government in general and former Finance Minister María Jesús Montero in particular. Why? Because among other things, Montero is the PSOE candidate for the upcoming Andalusian regional elections on May 17th. For its part, the main mandate of the European Public Prosecutor's Office is to protect the financial interests of the Union. For this reason, it is competent to investigate and prosecute crimes such as fraud against the European Union budget, embezzlement of European funds or assets by public officials. It must also investigate corruption and money laundering linked to those funds. In this context, it must act when there is harm to the budget of the European Union. However, and this is important, the European prosecutor from Spain, Ignacio de Lucas, was chosen by the government of Pedro Sánchez and the then Attorney General Álvaro García Ortiz in April 2023. In other words, are we facing an Attorney General's office controlled by Teresa Peramato, and does that mean it is also controlled by the government of Pedro Sánchez? And we are facing a European Prosecutor's Office controlled by Ignacio de Lucas, who was nominated by the government of Pedro Sánchez and by the then Attorney General Álvaro García Ortiz, who has already been convicted by the Supreme Court. That's the situation. Let's go into a bit more detail about what that report from the Court of Auditors was actually saying. The Court of Auditors revealed this Tuesday that the government of Pedro Sánchez drew on 2,389.4 million euros in European funds in November 2024 to pay pensions. In a 745-page report, 2024 accounts. The court noted the insufficient budgetary credit to meet unavoidable commitments for civil service pensions and supplements for minimum pensions in the social security system. This led to the authorization of two modifications. For 2,389.4 million euros, a credit extension was made on November 6, 2024 for 1,722.1 million euros, and a credit transfer was made on November 19, 2024. For the remaining amount, which is 667.3 million, both were financed with surplus credits from Service 50 Recovery and Resilience Mechanism. This is extremely serious information. The truth is, there isn't a single day without a huge scandal or a crime committed by Pedro Sánchez's government. And pay close attention, because the prosecutor's office, the State Attorney General's office led by Teresa Peramato, and the European prosecutor's office, whose top representative in Spain was proposed by Pedro Sánchez's government and by the former State Attorney General Álvaro García Ortiz. They are looking the other way to avoid opening an investigation for embezzlement against the former Vice President of the government and Minister of Finance, María Jesús Montero, for diverting that amount of 2.389 billion euros from European funds to pay pensions in 2024. A new major scandal from the government, and Montero could face up to 4 years in prison for this crime of embezzlement. However, the prosecutor's office under Teresa Peramato and the European prosecutor's office are once again protecting the government of Pedro Sánchez. We'll see what happens with this issue, because a complaint has already been filed by Manos Limpias on this matter. We'll see if it moves forward, and of course any updates you'll have here on Medidas Cautelares with Miguel Ángel Pérez. That's it for this edition of Medidas Cautelares with Miguel Ángel Pérez. Remember, you can become members like the chosen ones for under 3 euros a month or supreme ones for under 7 euros a month. You can also make contributions via Bizum, which, as you know, is a much simpler way to make transfers through your mobile phone. Each person gives what they can and when they can, as I always tell you, at 627-556-370, 627-556-370. And that's it. Just to remind you that we are exclusively publishing all the sessions of the Coldo case trial, which has already been held in the Supreme Court and is now pending a verdict. And you ask me every day when I'm going to upload the testimonies of Aldama, of Coldo, the final statement of the chief anti-corruption prosecutor Alejandro Luzon. We're working on it. This weekend we'll keep publishing more sessions, and as we get all the sessions, we'll publish them. So, don't worry, because you'll have all the sessions exclusively on Medidas Cautelares with Miguel Ángel Pérez from the trial in the Coldo case. I know you're following them very closely. Everything in its own time, as they say. Thank you all so much for your support, for your likes, for sharing these videos, and for all the views we're already getting this May. We're already starting to get back to our usual pace after a few quieter months, more of a pause because of the change in YouTube's algorithm, but anyway, we're starting to get back to our usual rhythm. The most important thing, as we always say, is that this information reaches everyone because information is power. See you soon.